This video will show you important highlights of the recently adopted New Mexico 2018 International Residential Energy Conservation Code. We will go over changes brought by the new code and some tips for compliance. The new energy code becomes mandatory for New Mexico statewide for all new construction permitted after March 25, 2021. For this video, we will focus on the residential energy code. Let's get started. Our energy code uses a system of mandatory design details based on various climate zones. These climate zones have been developed by our state energy department and take our varied elevations into account. These climate zones will dictate what you need to do for compliance. Your project can achieve energy code compliance in one of several ways. These are the compliance paths. In New Mexico, we have several paths available to use for compliance with the new code. Each path is useful for different types of projects. Before you begin your project, you must pick the path you will use to create the design and get your building permit. For this video, we will talk about the two paths used most often. The first path actually includes two techniques. Both require referring to the prescriptive table R402.1.2. A prescriptive method simply dictates what the energy rating of each of your home's components must be. For example, under this path, ceiling insulation would need to have an R value of R49 in Climate Zone 4. This path is simple, but not very flexible. However, Section R402.1.5, Total UA Alternative, allows the use of ResCheck software to compare a modified component with a prescriptive table. If you need a big window to take in a special view, you can beef up someplace else. This way, you can still use the picture window and be compliant with the code. This path is used most frequently for passive solar design in New Mexico. The other path used most often is the performance path, utilizing above code programs such as Build Green New Mexico and LEED H. These programs add an energy specialist to your team. A specialist can help you comply with the new energy code, especially if you have not built a highly energy efficient home before. We strongly suggest you arrange for those resources before you begin designing a home for permitting after March 25th. Here's another tip. These performance-based programs are exempt from the mandatory sections that are required in all of the other path methods. The exact wording for all paths to compliance is available online at nmhba.com. For now, let's get back to the basic mandatory requirements of the new code. Much of the new code is focused on the home's thermal envelope. Many of the requirements are about how indoor conditioned space is to be constructed. The prescriptive table is the all-important summary for mandatory compliance for the new energy code. As we noted earlier, this table is set up by climate zones. The climate zone for your project will dictate values for the various home components. Here are a few examples of where these values have changed from prior codes. Let's start with windows. Be aware that the U value for windows has decreased from prior codes, requiring them to be more energy efficient. Also, you need to pay attention to a window's solar heat gain coefficient rating, which is the ability of window coatings to reduce heat gain from the sun. For example, in Climate Zone 4, which includes Albuquerque and Rio Rancho, the new energy code requires an SHGC of 0.40 or better. Many big warehouses stock Energy Star windows with a rating of 0.30 at no increased cost. The R19 in walls has been bumped up to R20. Be aware that if you are using 2x4 framing, you will have to change your building technique. R20 bats or blown-in insulation will not fit into 2x4 framing. You will have to either switch to 2x6 framing or use R13 in the walls with another R5 in rigid foam on the outside. Rigid foam on the outside requires other changes due to moisture management issues. R values in ceilings is bumped up too. In Climate Zone 4, for instance, buildings were required to have R38 in ceilings under the prior energy code. They will be required to have R49 under the new code. That's a pretty big jump. But here's another tip. Use raised heel trusses. An exception in R402.2 of the code lowers overall required R value in ceilings for using raised heel trusses. This allows installing continuous insulation over the outside top plate, and that saves a significant amount of energy. This means rather than being required to have R49 in Zone 4, for instance, you could be in compliance with R38. Talk with your truss provider about this option. This may be a cost-effective way for you to build a better home and reduce your installation costs. The Energy Code continues to require ducting to be insulated to R8, but there is a method to get extra credit if you want to use it. This involves making sure ducting is buried within at least R30 ceiling insulation. That will get your ducting credit for R25 if you need to trade it off for larger windows. For more on this, you can read the January 2021 issue of the Housing Journal on the NMHBA website. The National Association of Home Builders also has a Tech Notes paper on this issue. On-demand controls are now required for recirculating domestic hot water systems. This can simply be a wall switch that can be turned on, wired to a timer and the pump. Also, there must be a control to limit the temperature of hot water returning into cold water pipes to no hotter than 104 degrees. The code contains a requirement for mechanical ventilation. New homes must be sealed up tighter than ever before, so indoor air quality becomes a bigger issue. There must be sufficient air to allow combustion appliances and fireplaces to run. The prior energy code allowed 7 air changes per hour. The new energy code requires no more than 4 air changes per hour. The code doesn't tell you how to get fresh air into a home, but some method is needed to pull outside air in and push stale air out. Some builders are utilizing bathroom exhaust fans for this purpose, but where does the replacement air come from? Experts are saying you probably should look for a more sophisticated solution. These include energy recovery ventilation, commonly called an ERV, or a similar component. The building science around indoor air quality can be complicated. Ask your mechanical contractor for the best method for the home you are designing. For more details on these units, you might want to read the December 2020 issue of the NMHBA Housing Journal, also on the NMHBA website. The state has added a new section that requires the air changes per hour to be tested by a blower door test in certain counties. The rest of the state may continue utilizing the New Mexico Air Sealing Visual Inspection Checklist. Many energy raters have said following the visual checklist will ensure meeting the 4 ACH requirement if executed carefully. It should be noted again that those building to Build Green New Mexico or LEED H programs may trade off the ACH requirements if the home has increased energy efficiency elsewhere. Earlier in the video, we recommended getting professional assistance with building homes under the new energy code. Build Green New Mexico is one of the above code programs that gives you assistance in design and construction. The Home Builders Association of Central New Mexico developed the Build Green New Mexico program to help builders construct energy and water efficient homes. Check out their services online. The New Mexico amendments to the 2018 International Residential Energy Conservation Code are available online for you to read for yourself, and we encourage you to do so. Also, be aware that your local government may have adopted its own version of the new energy code. If so, their code is probably more stringent in some respects than the state of New Mexico code. Check with your local building department on this. One last note. As always with building codes, code officials and contractors sometimes have different interpretations of the written code. That probably doesn't surprise anyone in the construction business. New Mexico Home Builders Association staff and volunteers worked closely with state officials in drafting the code documents we have highlighted here. In this video, we have presented what we believe the new energy code requires. Remember, the new code is mandatory statewide starting March 25th, 2021. This video was made possible by funding from the Foundation for Building, El Paso Electric, P&M, and New Mexico Gas Company. This is a production of the New Mexico Home Builders Association.